Today we're going back to the country. The title of the poem is 重过何氏, revisiting General He's. And this is the same General He that we made the acquaintance of in another series of poems, a series of 10 poems, from which I made a selection of 6 to talk about quite recently. So Du Fu is back in the same place, and if you watch that video or if you've read these poems, you know that Du Fu had a very, very nice and memorable trip to the country estate of General He, and he started dreaming immediately of stopping his dreams of pursuing an imperial career in the bureaucracy, and instead just sort of taking as his goal in life to have a nice place out in the country somewhere and live a nice and quiet life. And these themes are back in full force in this second series, which is of 5 poems. So what we have here is in many ways the same. We have a set of 5  律诗, and the style is very, very similar actually to the ones we talked about last time. And there's not really any point in going through all of these in any greater detail, apart from a sense of completeness. We're going back again. In one way, they could be read as one long series of 15 poems, 10 the first year, and this probably the next 5 probably in the spring of next year. If you remember, the other 10, they were written sort of in early summer, and this is a series of spring poems, which you can tell from the vocabulary and the scenery that is being depicted in the poems. So this is likely the next year compared from the last series. And I've decided to choose 2 of these poems to look at the vocabulary and the text in more detail. The ones I've chosen are the 3rd and the 5th, so just let's get to it. I don't think Du Fu is accompanied by anyone here. It might be that he made the acquaintance of General He last time, and now he was invited for a second. It seemed like he was invited by himself for a second round trip. This poem, the 3rd one in this series, I've chose because I think it's just the most wonderful depiction of peace and stillness. And this is something that you may sort of in a cliched way be associating Chinese poetry with in general, but at least if we talk about Du Fu, I think they are frequently permeated by a sense of immense unease with life as it is. Always something wrong, always melancholy, always frustration, sometimes even desperation. In this poem, everything is fine, which is why I choose it and why I love it. Let me read it to you first. 落日平台上，春风辍明时，石栏斜点笔，桐叶作题诗，翡翠明一行，蜻蜓立调丝，自今幽杏熟，来往亦无期。And I don't think vocabulary-wise or language-wise there's really not much to comment upon either. There are a few things, of course. We've got this quite unusual word here, 啜, which just means to drink, basically. So 啜明 is the same as 喝茶, or 品茶would be probably the normal way to say it in classical Chinese of Du Fu's period. 啜明 instead of 品茶, is sort of a variation, a little bit of variation in the vocabulary. What are they doing here actually? Well, they sit here and drink tea, and then they write poems on Paulownia leaves. Paulownia, I suppose this is the the 梧桐树. 梧桐树, which is a very common plant in China. If you've been to Shanghai, you know that the trees are lined with 梧桐 trees. But, you know, this 梧桐 doesn't have a normal name in English. 桐叶, they're sitting and writing poems on these leaves. And probably they're sort of leaning, there's a stone railing here somewhere where they've put the inkstone. And that's why he dips his brush, 点笔, aslant, 斜点笔. I suspect, not being an expert in calligraphy, that you are actually supposed to dip your brush in a perpendicular way at the inkstone and not in an aslant way, because then you will drip ink all over the place. But they've just put it on the inkstone on the stone railing where they're sitting, and they don't want to get up and stand up to do it. They just scribble their nice poems, their inspirations to each other on the leaves they pick off the ground. So it's just an immensely beautiful picture. And they've got the tea and everything, you know. 翡翠名一行. This one I didn't know before I looked it up. Hang, this is pronounced hang, as you might guess. 一行 is a clothes rack of some kind. And they probably put their warm clothes off because spring is warmer than they expected. And they've got little kingfishers, you know, singing around it, which is also a wonderful picture. You can just imagine the kind of relaxation they have here when the birds start coming close to them. And ting, dragonflies, stand around their fishing lines. They're actually fishing at the same time. And I love this li. They're sort of standing in the air. Stand on the fishing line here, but the picture I get in my mind is that they're sort of standing immobile in air around the fishing line. It's just also a wonderful picture of the stillness and natural beauty of the whole scenery. Man and mute creatures like birds and insects in perfect harmonious union. 自今忧性熟. This word here is quite an unusual way to use this. From this moment, my zested seclusion, well, 忧性, it comes over and over in these poems. 忧性. I don't even know how to translate it, and neither does Owen. He says zested seclusion, yeah. I've talked about this before, so I won't go into it now. He calls it 熟, mature. Like a fruit is mature, or like a piece of meat that you've boiled to perfection is mature. That is, it has reached its fullness. So this is an unusual way of using this word. And 来往一无期, 无期, that is, you know, they can go wherever they want, to whatever place they want without a plan. So, you know, this is just the here and now when the here and now is perfect. And it's nice to have at least a few poems like this by Du Fu, who, as I said, is not usually exactly the most carefree guy in the world. Let's go to the other one that I picked. And this one is not at all the same. Unfortunately, now it's time for him to go home again. The last one in the series, number 5. 到此应长宿，香留可盼年。蹉跎慕容色，怅望好林泉。何日沾微露，归山买薄田。思游恐不遂，把酒亦茫然。As all the poems in this series, it has this perfection of sort of balance in its diction. It almost doesn't sound as poetry. It almost sounds like a kind of prose, but then you realize that the poetic form is just so perfect. so that it gives the impression of being prose, even though of course it isn't. 到此吟长宿夜，相留可盼年. This pan is somewhat colloquial. It's kind of colloquial, I think. It pops up here and there, actually, in the classics. It means basically sort of, in this sense, it means sort of not to care about. So companion, not to care about, that is, you can waste it. So here it means I could spend a year here, and sort of let that year go to waste because it's so wonderful in this place. And I hope, my dear listeners and viewers, that you've had experiences like this for yourself, when you go to a place that's so beautiful and you're in such a good mood that you might well stay there for 1 year. That is what Du Fu has had here, but now he needs to go home and reality is back. And reality at this point in his life, it's his usual business of being 40 and jobless. So it's not such a nice prospect. He's like not exactly full of the joy of life in his daily life. So here is 蹉跎慕容色. This is how he describes himself, I suppose. 蹉跎 is sort of to spend time, without any concrete gain. So it's in a very negative sense, so not getting anywhere in life. That is 蹉跎. And 慕容色, of course, is the look of autumn. The look of dusk, the look of twilight. It might be that he's actually talking about the dusk, the twilight that is in front of him, but it may also be that he's describing himself here. I think it's probably the latter, that he's describing himself, and his lack of success in life. This makes him look at the wonderful woods and springs and feel, pain. 怅望, it's not just sadly, it's like with pain. The things that were so beautiful for him now becomes painful because he has to go away, and he remembers that this is not his life. His life is something else. His life is despondency and desperation of perhaps not being able to one day, 张微路, get an official job, as exactly as Owen says, enjoy a meager salary. 张微路. 张, of course, means just to become infused with, as you're infused with a liquid, a little bit, as you just dip a piece of fabric in a little bit of water. That is 沾. So that's what you want to do in the smallest of official salaries, and that's, if you can only do that and go back to the hills and buy some 薄田 would be poor fields really that are inadequate for real farming. But that's not the point. The point is just to get by and enjoy life. 归山, actually I don't think it needs to be that as literal, actually, as return to the hills. It's just to retire. 思游恐不遂. Such a journey, exactly what Owen says. The journey of going to his own place like that is something that he'll probably never 遂, which will never be fulfilled. It's a hope that will never be fulfilled. So that's why he stands there and he feels as if there is no clear road ahead of him. That is what 茫然 means, basically. I think my thoughts are in a daze sounds like he doesn't know what he's thinking about. 一茫然 is more like there's no clear direction for him forward when he stands there with his glass in hand. So these are two of the poems in the series, and they're very varying in mood, but very similar in form. And I think they're both very nice. And I'm not going to talk anymore about this series right now, but I hope I will get back ahead with some more of Du Fu's landscape musings if I have time, if I have the opportunity. But I'm not sure that there will be so many opportunities, because the An Lushan rebellion is about to break out, and Du Fu, he complains a lot, and he doesn't have a lot of hours to just look on the bright side of life, as he does, at least in this one, the third. So thank you for listening anyway, and bye.